Hello and welcome back to the channel. Today I'll be showing you how to make a Bonal princess collar shirt. If you'd like the pattern, please click on the link below in the description box. First, take your front shirt piece pattern and cut out 2 of these front pieces. Next, we're going to take tracing paper and a tracing wheel. You can get both of these at your local Joann's or order them online. And then we're going to trace our darts right onto the fabric. And we're going to do this to both sides. Make sure you're doing it to opposite sides of the front pieces. Once you have your darts traced, we're going to fold along the fold lines and pin it in place so that we can sew along the sew lines. Next, take your back piece and fold your fabric and put your back piece on top. Make sure that the fold line is on the fold of the fabric so that you get one big piece like this. Right after that, you're going to trace your darts over to your back piece and again flip it over and do the opposite side as well. After tracing on our darts on the back pieces, we're also going to fold along the fold line and then pin it down so that we can sew along the sew line. Repeat this process with lining fabric. Here I've used a red cotton as my lining fabric and I'm showing you an example of how to sew the bust dart. Just fold along the fold line and I'm using my right hand to hold down the fold and then my left hand to kind of shift the fabric around and make sure it's nice and flat where the sewing line is. Once you have all your darts sewn, they'll look like this. So you want to have all your darts sewn for the front pieces and the back pieces for both the actual black shirt fabric and for your lining fabric. And then you want to iron all of your darts flat. So I'm showing you this on the lining fabric so you could see it a little better than the black fabric. But I like to iron the excess fabric out towards the sides of the shirt. After that, you're going to connect the shoulders of the shirt piece to itself and then the lining piece to itself. So you could see black is on black and the red lining here is on the red lining. You're going to go to your sewing machine and sew all the shoulders closed together. So here the example is the red lining, but you want to do this to all 4 shoulders, both the reds and the blacks. And your pieces should come out looking like this. This is the black piece. And then we're going to iron the shoulders nice and flat so that that seam is not popping up anymore. Now we're going to cut out the collar piece and I'm going to use blue as my collar piece. I've doubled my fabric over so that it's actually going to be one really long piece. So you'll want to do that as well with your pattern piece. And then we're going to also cut out an exact copy using interfacing, and then we're going to iron the interfacing onto our collar. This is to help make it stiffer so that your collar actually pops up, unless you have a really stiff fabric already for your collar. After ironing on the interfacing, you're going to fold your collar piece in half the long way and then iron it nice and flat. Once you have that piece all done, we're going to take the ends here, flip them inside out, and then pin them down, and we're going to sew them together 1/2 inch across on both ends. After sewing your ends, you'll want to cut away some of the excess fabric in the corners and then flip it inside out, and I use a needle to pop out the corners. Now we're going to sew the collar to the shirt and to the lining. And to know where to start the collar, there's a marking on the front shirt here. So I chalk where that starts and I lay down where the collar would start on the black shirt. So you'll want the darts with the excess fabric on the outsides, and you want the good sides of the shirt and the lining to face each other with the collar on the inside. Then we're going to pin the neckline all the way around to the back of the collar and all the way back around to the front again. You can see here I'm working section by section and keeping the fabric nice and flat and tight together so that there's no wrinkles. If you don't hold down everything nice and neat with pins and you have wrinkles when you sew all three of these pieces together, you'll also get wrinkles and you'll have to go back and fix it. So work section by section, make sure that each section is nice and flat with no wrinkles. After that, you'll want to sew around the whole neckline from one end all the way to the other side and remove the pins as you go. Once you have your neckline all sewn, you can flip it over and double check to make sure there's no wrinkles. And then if there's no wrinkles, you're going to give it a couple cuts right around the shoulder neckline area up at the top. This is so it'll prevent bunching around those areas that are really tight. After that, you're going to iron your collar nice and flat all the way around, and your completed shirt piece should look like this. To finish making the shirt, you'll have to cut out your sleeves and your cuffs. And on this shirt, I'm going to be using the puffy sleeve. If you don't like the puffy sleeve, you can go ahead and just trace out the regular sleeve, which is the lower markings on this pattern. Because I'll be using the puffy sleeve, I'll also need to trace these markings at the very top of the sleeve onto both sides of my sleeve. My puffy sleeve will look like this with these markings. Next, I'm going to cut out my cuffs, and I'm using blue for blue cuffs. And you want to cut out two of these, one for each sleeve. Now we're going to complete our sleeves so that we can attach them to our shirt. You want to start with the lining piece on the bottom, put your cuff piece in the center, and then put your black shirt sleeve on top. And then we're going to pin them together at the wrist. And then we're going to sew them all together at the wrist using a 1/2 inch seam. Once you flip open your sleeve, it'll look like this. And we're going to iron everything nice and flat, and then flip over the lining completely and iron again. Make sure that the blue cuff is on the black side. Now we're going to chalk where the cuff is. Check your pattern. This one is 3 inches. And I take a ruler and measure from the edge of the sleeve upwards. Chalk off where 3 inches is and then pin it down. And then you take it over to the sewing machine and do a top stitch on the blue to sew the blue cuff down to the sleeve. Next, you're going to fold the pleats on your puffy shoulder. To do that, pinch the first line, fold on the second line, and meet the third line with the pinched fabric. That will create a pleat. And then you'll want to repeat that again on one side of the shoulder. So you'll have 2 on each side with a total of 4 pleats. What we're going to do is we're going to do a top stitch on the cuff to hold it together, and then we're going to baste our puffy shoulder pleats down while we're at the sewing machine. Here I'm using a top stitch to sew the cuff down to my black sleeve. You can see I'm removing pins as I go. Next, I'm going to baste my puffy shoulder pleats together. And you can see I'm just starting right at where the pleats start and removing pins as I sew across. And this will just hold my pleats together. Here's my puffy sleeve. You can see the puffs up at the top. And I'm going to cut away the excess cuff at the bottom. And now we're going to attach our sleeve to our shirt. Here is the shirt piece sewn together. We just need to add sleeves here. And you could see there's excess fabric in the armhole, and I'm going to snip that off, just making it meet up to where the curve line is. Now we're going to add the sleeve, and I like to start in the middle. So take the middle part of the puffy shoulder and make it match up to the shoulder line where the seam is. And then I like to work my way out from one side to the other. After pinning down the whole sleeve, you may have excess sleeve on each end. That's okay, we will trim it off later. But this is what it should look like once you add on your sleeve, and you want to do that to both sides before you head over to the sewing machine and sew your sleeve to your shirt. And here I'm sewing the sleeve to the shirt, and I'm doing it quite slowly and I'm removing one pin at a time. There will be some excess fabric causing puffs or bumps or wrinkles, and what you'll want to do to avoid that is to pull the fabric on top away from you towards the needle. You want to keep the surface that you're sewing flat. After sewing your sleeve together, but before you serge, make sure you flip it over to check to see if there are any wrinkles. If there are no wrinkles, then you can go ahead and serge your sleeve and your shirt together. Here's your pieces all put together with a nice clean serged edge and my puffy sleeves. And to finish up, you'll want to attach the sleeves together and the shirt together to close up the shirt. I like to start by pinning the armpit together and then working my way up from the sleeve all the way down to the hem of the shirt. Because there's excess fabric at the sleeve, I'm going to just chalk in a sewing line that goes from the wrist up to the armpit, and all the other extra fabric I will cut off at a later time. Now we're going to sew the shirt together from the sleeves all the way down to the hem of the shirt. Next, you're going to serge from the sleeve all the way down to the hem of the shirt and get rid of all that extra fabric. And then to finish up completely, I'm going to serge the very bottom of the shirt, so the hem, all the way across from right side to left side. And then I'm going to fold in the hem about 1/2 inch, and I'm going to sew that flat as well, so that when you look at your shirt, you won't see any of the serged edge. So here's what my shirt looks like once completed. I've sewn up the sides, so my sleeves are connected, my sides are connected, the bottom is hemmed up, and I'm going to flip it inside out, and this is my completed puffy shoulder princess collar shirt. Thank you so much, and I hope you enjoyed this video.